Hello and welcome to Talk Back, the show where we ask tough, compelling questions from tough, compelling people. After a brief stint in the army, he joined the PPP and served loyally with it for over 2 decades before splitting and forming his own faction. He served as the chief minister of the NWFP in the 80s and then in the 90s. He has survived 2 suicide attacks on him. He has just served as the Interior Minister of Pakistan in what some call is the toughest job in the country. Some call him the most conniving deal-maker of the NWFP. We call him a survivor. Aftab Ahmad Sherpao, welcome to Talk Back.
Thank you, Vajad. Thank you very much.
I'm going to start with a quote. This is when you were chief minister in 1988, 89, and 90. The Nation, August 18th, 1989, Get Sherpao, Misadventure was called. What is going on between the PPP and the IGI has now started transgressing all limits of common decency. A legitimate political ambition to occupy the treasury benches has been turned into a bazaar where bribing and corrupting of politicians is now deemed to be the norm. This was written about you when you were in power the first time around as chief minister. Evidently, your thirst for the treasury was enough to raise a lot of criticism. You received less seats than the IGI, but you bought out a lot of defections. Is it true?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's not true. I'm a man of crisis, and we formed the government here. The IGI, or the Muslim League then, they just left the place, and their leader, Raja Sikandar Zaman, once the elections were held, he went to Islamabad, and his party was left behind. We formed the government with ANP first because we had more seats, and they had less seats than us, and later on faction of the IGI, they joined us, and that is how things started.
But these maneuverings, Sherpao Saab, these maneuverings took you to quite some heights. You ditched the ANP, you had promised the ANP the governorship, but you never gave them the governorship. And your government was so shaky that there were more non-PPP ministers and advisors than there were PPP advisors, so much so to the effect that there was a Save the People's Party movement launched in this province against you. Your own people rebelled against you.
Well, I don't think they rebelled. And
well, what does launched the People's Party, Save the People's Party movement mean?
That a few, you see, this was for the first time after Mr. Bhutto that People's Party came into power. And the workers had a lot of expectations. They were wanting jobs, they were wanting, to be everywhere, and naturally when you're in government you have to govern and you have to do your governmental jobs, duties also, which, there was a few people who just wanted, more attention, and that couldn't be paid, and that was, and it fizzled out. I think there wasn't any...
It did fizzle out. There was even a baton charge against them from the NWF police. Your own people were beaten up during your own tenure. But anyways, we can move on from that point. Okay. What I want to know is that how did you have more IGI or more defection ministers, non-PPP ministers, advisors in your cabinet than you had your own people? And well, how do you explain the ANP ditch? They were supposed to be governor. What happened?
Well, that didn't take place because Ghulam Shah Khan was sitting there. He was the president and he was the appointing authority.
What about education and health ministries? They were supposed to go to the ANP too.
They did.
But with a lot of qualifications from your end?
No, I think they got the major share of the ministries and the good ministries. That was
they said you were very interventionist. They said you didn't let them appoint the people they wanted to appoint in their ministries.
No, that is, you have to follow the rules of business.
All right, let's move on to your second tenure.
Yeah.
There were allegations of corruption as far as luring the opposition is concerned. One, Hamid Asghar Kidwai, the banker, the chief of the NWFP Mehran Bank, who you've called your friend, actually had allegations against you. There were transcripts, there were tapes he produced, which had you in corruption charges.
You see, whether it was maneuvered by Hamid Asghar Kidwai or someone else, that's a different question. And I know, and I don't want to, put the blame on someone else, but this was something which was framed against me, and they used it politically, but they couldn't get headway anyway.
But a lot of people thought those tapes had veracity, sir.
Well,
Whoever heard those
that
tapes,
is,
whoever heard those tapes was of the opinion that that was your voice.
well, that was their opinion.
We have to take a short break here. We are with Aftab Ahmad Khan Sherpao. You are watching Talk Back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to another episode of Talk Back with Aftab Ahmad Khan Sherpao. All right, let's take a detour. Your name is associated with several NAB cases. You were put on the ECL. You fled the country. You came back. We're not going to talk about the nitty-gritty of those allegations. We don't have enough time. What I want to know is how does it feel to be associated with corruption? Don't you think that's a mark on your integrity, a permanent mark?
I have been vindicated in that because it went in my favor. I am a fighter and I faced all the charges, and I have been fighting. There are still, cases in the Supreme Court against me because I have won the cases and NAF has gone to the Supreme Court. So I'm still,
But don't you think there's been a permanent mark imprinted on the character?
I've been winning elections after that. Well, the vindication is the last general elections, where I won the National Assembly, I won the Provincial Assembly. My party was the second largest party in this province.
Some people say that your corruption cases were used as a leverage against you for you to cause a split with the PPP. Your split with the PPP was pressured because of your cases.
No, it wasn't that way. You see, after the 97 elections, PPP lost very badly throughout. From Frontier, there was no one elected to the National Assembly. Even in Punjab, not a single National Assembly seat was won. What I proposed in the party was that let's hold elections and let the worker bring people who they trust, so that at least we get a new image and, the workers start coming out. Well, it was agreed to initially, and later on, the chairperson, she said no, no election. She made herself life chairperson. So that is how things developed, and she made me the vice chairman of the party. But I knew that this is a seat where there is bound to, we are bound to have differences, and that is what happened. And
So it wasn't because of the corruption cases?
why should it be? Well,
some people say it's also because of ego problems you had with Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto.
I don't think
Two
we
strong
had,
personalities in one small country.
Well, I have my own style, and I'm not that person who just, goes around and,
Some people say that she thought you had colluded with Mr. Laghari.
Had I colluded with Mr. Laghari, Laghari would not have made cases against me. And I would have, remained, had I wanted, I would have remained the caretaker chief minister of this province, but I didn't.
Why did you flee the country when NAB came knocking?
Okay, that's a good question. You see, a couple of days before that, this was the first NAB case, test case in Pakistan, in Peshawar. My case was there. My cases were there in the High Court. They were shifted to, transferred to the NAB court. This was the first judgment coming. And when the judgment came, it was in my favor. They had everything ready, the police van, everything to take me to jail. The judgment came in my favor. So I took out a